Everyone, today we are going to see the all of SSRF disclosed reports of GitLab.com, and we will understand how hackers have manipulated their features and earn some money out of SSRF vulnerability on GitLab. And here you can see the high report has been rewarded $10,000. So we are going to read and understand all of these reports one by one. So I was basically doing research on the GitLab program, so I thought that I should make a video specifically that on the SRF vulnerability, that I have some knowledge and I am still learning about this topic. So it's a long time ago I haven't made any video on my YouTube channel, so I thought that I should make one. So first I have opened all of these SRF on my Chrome tab. One by one we are going to we will go through all of these reports and see their patches and see how hackers have hacked GitLab. So let's start with this one, whose heading is Fog Buzz Import Attachment Full SSRF requiring vulnerability in wildcard fogbuzz.com. So at that time, in 2021, the fogbuzz.com was under the scope of GitLab.com. GitLab, bug bounty program. Now I don't think this website is available, but this is an awesome report by Chapman. So we are going to go through this. Here he have said a bit of odd one here. The Fogbuzz imports code uses carrier wave uploader base download. Carrier wave is a module, and inside that an uploader module or class exists and base, and in that way this is basically a Ruby code. So it is saying that the Fogbuzz import code uses this code to download attachments from the fogbuzz.com. So basically this code is responsible for the downloading of attachments, like the archives or WinRAR attachments. Such type of attachments are being downloaded. And when importing a Fogbuzz repository, it is saying that when we are importing a Fogbuzz repository to gitlab.com, carrier wave is basically, I'm going to tell you that carrier wave is basically a thing, you can say the sanitizer, an agent, a user agent of the GitLab, which sanitizes the things whenever the thing whichever the uploader things, all the uploaded files will go through the carrier wave. So this will sanitize. That's the responsibility of the carrier wave, right? Ultimately uses the carrier wave. It is saying that when importing the Fogbuzz repository, it is ultimately using the kernel.open. Kernel.open is a function which allows opening some sort of execution command or opening of file on the operating system. To download, it is using the kernel.open to download the provided attachment URL. And what it is doing on the carrier wave, it is basically using kernel.open to download an attachment of the URL and permits URLs which resolves to or redirect to localhost, making it vulnerable to SRF. It is saying that it allows URL to resolve to localhost, making it vulnerable to SRF issues. So this is a simple thing. I don't think there is an explanation needed. So there is a check within the Fogbuzz import code which requires attachments to be downloaded within an HTTP or HTTPS schema for buzz.com. subdomain. So basically it is saying that there is a check which is going under Fogbuzz import code, which requires attachments to be downloaded. Before the attachments is are going to be downloaded, it needs to it has a certain type of check, right, which validates the URL schemas like HTTP, like protocols, as we know it, from fogbuzz.com subdomain. It checks the fogbuzz.com HTTP or HTTPS, and it here app services projects download services.rb. There is the code which is responsible for this vulnerability. So we are going to go through this code. Basically here is a whitelist name an array. Inside that array there is basically you can say a regex is handling the .com domains, fogbuzz.com domains. And what it does basically, to be very honest, I have a little knowledge. It is checking the dots, and after that it is adding anything, slash dot, also it is checking the slash dots or something like that. And after that it is using the dot freeze method in order to check that this is valid. It is doing some sort of regex checking in order to extract the domains of the fogbuzz.com. So that's the thing, you can say. And this the dollar sign means that it's the end of the URL, or it's the end of the it's the end of the domain or something like that, right? It always shows the end. So there is a valid URL function which is taking an argument URL, and inside that function URL and HTTP method. Inside that HTTP method there is also the URL which is being passed at here, similarly is being passed at there. And after that a valid domain function will validate the URL, that whether this is a valid domain or this is just a junk command or whatever thing. So this valid function will validates the URL whether it is a valid domain or not. That's the task of the valid URL. And after that, this HTTP URL, what it does, it takes arguments of the URL, and then it also checks. It is using a regex based URI check, which passes the things like make regex regular expression, and then it is checking whether this URL is from the HTTP and HTTPS. Other than those URLs it will not allow. Why it is using these check? Because there are some dangerous protocols like Gopher, like File, so they should be protected from if you are taking a URL and bringing something from out of the server, right, from internal server. So you have to check that this is whether the URL is having a valid domain and having HTTP or HTTPS protocol. So this will allow to make you a little bit safer, right? After that there is a function which is called valid domain. Inside that valid domain function there is a URL is being passed, right? And inside that valid domain, what it is taking, it's a host variable which is URI.parse function is parsing the URL, and .host is being used. Again, whitelist.any, whitelist here it is being used. Whitelist.any, it is whitelisting allowing the only URL which contains the fogbuzz.com. Other than they are not allowing any hosts. So that's so good. So basically there were three functions. The first function is valid URL, and the second function is checking the whether this is valid schema or not, the URL having the valid schema or not. And the third one is checking the valid domain, whether this is from fogbuzz.com or not. So this is basically the code. Why I have explained this code in so much, because I want to understand for myself as well, and I want to emphasize that if we if we ace this skill of learning or doing the source code review, so it will be worthwhile. If a vulnerability can be identified from fogbuzz.com subdomain, which results in returning crafted API response, including an arbitrary attachment URL. It is saying that if we identify any vulnerability at fogbuzz.com, any subdomain, like it is checking the only subdomains which the subdomains of fogbuzz.com, and there is a lot of other fogbuzz.com subdomains. If it is saying that if we have identified vulnerability on one of the subdomains of fogbuzz.com, which results in returning a crafted API response, including an arbitrary attachment URL, and in that crafted API response we will attach arbitrary attachment URL, which is attacker server. A full read get based SRF would be exploitable on gitlab.com. Then a full read, the SRF will be full read, which is exploitable on gitlab.com or GitLab instances. I have done some basic analysis on potential vulnerability. It is saying that I have done some basic assessments which could trigger this issue. They include but are no means limited to. So URL parameters collaborating to force 302 redirects to attachment downloads. What it is doing, it is saying that my exploitation will collaborate, mean exchange the URLs, redirect the URLs to forces the 302 redirects on attachment download URL, and after that intercept and modify unencrypted HTTP API response. This will the request will intercept and modify the unencrypted HTTP API response. Subdomain takeover, dangling subdomain to return an arbitrary API response. And these are the things it is mentioning the impact that the attacker can do. HTTP request smuggling to modify an in-flight API response, cache poisoning to poison a malicious API response, SQL injection to replace an attachment URL, and code execution to modify API.asp to return an arbitrary API response. Social engineering malicious inside fogbuzz employee.com. These are the possible damages that can that an attacker can achieve. Due to third-party nature of these issues, it is feasible to probe for. It is saying that the fogbuzz.com basically a third-party website which is integrating somehow on GitLab instance, and it is saying that this due to the nature of vulnerability which is third-party or disclose on the potential existence of any of these potential issues on fogbuzz.com to GitLab. However, if any one of these issues exist now or in the future, it would render gitlab.com vulnerable. It is saying that if any of the issue exists on fogbuzz.com, it will affect the gitlab.com vulnerable, right? Here are the steps to reproduce. The issue can be simulated by placing the etc host entry on the GitLab server as follow. What we need to do, we need to set some sort of internal host which we basically set on the local hosts, right? So it is saying that set our domain which is name is fogbuzz.com and give that your on localhost IP. So this will point the fogbuzz.com to VPSI control, which I responds with a crafted fogbuzz API response. So now if any of the user or webhook make a request to the fogbuzz.com, so this will also bypasses the regular expression, which is checking the subdomains only, that this request from fogbuzz.com, and it is also allowing to make out of bound requests. So here it is saying that I have controlled this fogbuzz.com. If let's say if the download attachment URL, which is making the request to poc.fogbuzz.com, so what will happen, it will give a crafted response, API response designed to simulate the exploitation of a bug on a fogbuzz.com domain, which is designed in a way that will exploit the fogbuzz.com domain. Importing SRF repository, let's say it is saying that importing repository from the fogbuzz repository from this host will create a repository with a single issue, which include SRF requesting to, it is saying that when we try to import a repository from fogbuzz.com, this host will create a repository with a single issue, and this will cause and create an issue, and which include the SRF results of requesting, the internal requesting which is being made to the localhost port 9090 and API/v/targets. So these are the basic things, and here you can see the Chapman is imported targets.json, which is the internal file from the GitLab. A vulnerability in a fogbuzz.com subdomain which meets the above criteria would result in a full get-based SRF issue against GitLab.com. So in that way, the targets.json is a file of internal file, right, of the GitLab instance, which the Alex was successfully made the request by this URL, right? So this will allows, the SRF allows bringing the internal files, reading the internal files. Fogbuzz import, what is the current behavior? This is the question GitLab asks to the hackers how they hack. What is the current behavior? Fogbuzz import code uses kernel.open to download and store results of untrusted URL. Kernel.open is being used to download and store the results of untrusted URL, means user controlled data. What is the expected correct behavior? GitLab HTTP should be used to download attachments to prevent SRF. Instead of using kernel.open, use GitLab HTTP, which will not allow which will prevent SRF attacks. So here is out of check, this is the version of all these systems that Alex has poked, and now the impact of vulnerability in fogbuzz.com subdomain which meets the above criteria would result in a full get-based SRF issue against GitLab.com. So here is the board. Thank you for the submitting this report. We will investigate the issue. Please do not submit, and these kind of messages. And again, Chapman has this is a good thing. I also when make reports to the GitLab.com, what I do, I basically come with new information that I have discovered. Anything you discover on your target, make sure to dump all of these new discoveries, new observations on the comment section of your report to make it solid report, so that it can give more information, so that it does not go further, needs more info state, right? To clarify, to To clarify, to reproduce this issue using this URL and poc.fogbuzz.com and etc host file entry detailed above, you must import the fogbuzz repository or HTTP, not HTTPS. What you have to do, it is saying you have to import the repository from HTTP, not HTTP, like it is saying HTTP fogbuzz.com. And here you can see that this is the fogbuzz URL where this is the attacker controlled, Alex Chapman controlled URL, where it has given it there, and it will continue to the next step, and then it will make the request, and the crafted request response will be given to that. So this is the basically the patch where they made and given the bounty, and we are going to see the patch as well, right? So this is the beauty of explanation. So we will discuss the patch as well. Thanks again for the submitting the support. We are very much appreciated your time and effort that you have put into. Please note that due to mitigating circumstances, many of you outlined in the original report supporting this finding, we changed the severity to medium. First, they have downgraded this report to medium, and then they realized that this is a high report, and they upgraded. Would you mind to share proof of concept with us here? I am asking primarily interest of making our remediation, testing and verification easier. If you share that hacker one, it would be wonderful. Thanks again for your interest in collaborating. And then his name is Andrew. Okay. And then Alex report was upgraded to high. Thank you again for your report. Your finding has been reviewed and been awarded to a bounty, and congratulations. Please note that upon further internal discussion, we decided to raise the severity of this finding back to high. We'll continue keep you updated on the hacker one, because this is an example of good program. That's why I love hacking GitLab. Because they don't want to lose a good researcher. So that's a particular primary sign of a good program, that they don't want to lose the good researchers, and that's why they treat their reports as high or critical, because they are actually critical. And after that, they have added some new response, like thank you again for your finding has been patched on 13.11.2, and you can do the same. If you install 13.11.1, you will be able to reproduce this issue. I will make another video where I will basically reproduce this issue, these type of issues. I have already reproduced a bunch of GitLab vulnerabilities, which I have learned a lot. Those were most of them were RCEs I have reproduced on my system locally. So it was a great learning experience. I would recommend everybody who wants to learn from GitLab reports, make sure to reproduce on your local system. You will learn a lot. And after that, it is saying it's simply reply of bug report above no longer works, indicating that this issue is resolved. I have done an extensive review of the update carrier wave gym, but from first reading, mitigation put in place looks good. So what was the medication and what was the discussions of developers, which always I am curious about. So here it is saying Andrew Kelly confirmed that this result in SRF after importing the project. It did indeed create an issue with JSON file attached. The JSON file is creating an issue attached that contained information about the service running in Looking the code base, the file uploader that gets used to download import inherits from GitLab uploader, and this is the path app slash uploader slash GitLab uploaders.rb, which itself inherits from carrier way uploader base. What it is saying, basically it is saying that we have again look at our code base, where we have found that the file uploader gets imported or downloaded from the GitLab uploader, which exists at the GitLab uploader.rb under the GitLab uploader.rb, and the carrier, which also inherits from carrier wave uploaders base. Right, there are at least a couple of mitigation factors. Now they are talking about the mitigation, how they are going to mitigate. That's an interesting part for us and for you guys who are listening to me. As the reporter mentions, this hinges on potential future vulnerability on Fogbuzz side. So this is a solid area where future vulnerabilities can arise. So we have to buckle up. But they do bring a number of serious scenarios where this is still could happen, such as subdomain takeover. So the vulnerability itself is not directly actionable. The user need to be tricked into importing a specific project. After clicking through the several other pages to begin, so they would need to be tricked to importing a particular project from a particular Fogbuzz URL. I would suggest that we try remediate this by using GitLab HTTP. I don't have a lot of context here, so this basically this developer is saying that we should to implement GitLab HTTP. I don't have a lot of context here, so maybe there's a reason that the carrier wave is being used here. It looks like GitLab uploader predates the creation of GitLab HTTP, so maybe they can switch to using that as per our secure coding guidelines. I will asking the reporter to follow up their POC so that we can verify test. We don't need to rely on them keeping that VPS alive, right? So the Harris says that thanks, and after that, upon further reconsideration by the team, I believe we need to update the priority and severity for this one. Unfortunately, due to my initial triage, I underestimate the impact and overestimate the mitigating factor. I'm paying out the bounty. I also bumped the HackerOne severity from medium back to high that the reporter has assigned. I think severity 2 and severity 2 is much more appreciated. I am going to update the S and P label. Reflects that sorry for any inconvenience this may cause to these developers, as the stable counterpart who also took place in follow-up conversation. Ron, please let me know if you think that the label change is unnecessary or something. Based on our conversation in Bug Bounty Council, I felt it needed to be high severity and priority. And yes, Ron Chen says Rowan is another interesting hacker which has also the rank of I guess 3 or 4 on GitLab.com, and they hired it as a security engineer. And Ron saying yes, you are right. Raising the priority here is definitely a better way to get this move forward. Hey, this bug looks interesting, so I want to give it a shoot of fixing it by using GitLab HTTP library. Opened a security issue right there, and we cannot access this because this is internal somehow, some things, but we will see the codes that remediate the issue that we are interested in, right? So here Ranchen has this issue can be resolved by it is referring this issue is closed by upgrading the carrier wave version. It is saying that we can upgrade the carrier wave version and the issue is solved. I confirm this would be resolved after carrier wave version is upgraded, and there I used file uploader.new a, and after that a.download localhost. Download error, could not download the file. Hostname localhost has no public IP address. Basically, they have upgraded their carrier wave. And thanks for confirming that, Ron. Once the security release is rolled out, I will ask the HackerOne reporter to. And finally, they have rewarded $6,000, which is pretty fair. I don't think, which is yeah, it's low a bit, but at that time I think this was the bounty tables fixation. Assuming that the carrier wave also updates this fixed, so we can close this issue. I'll go ahead and do for now. And where is the issue? I am interested at that. Again, saying merge requests, I will be interested on Control F, merge request. These were the merge requests. These all need relevant. So basically we were unable to see the actual code, what was the change, and we have seen the discussion, and we have seen that they have simply upgraded their version of carrier wave and they thought that this is fixed. So this was my first explanation of this vulnerability. I will make another video of this report as well.